That is right, Browns fans. It is a party in the 2019 season. Welcome into the OBR Straight Talk podcast. My name is Jared Mueller. I am your host today, and today we're going to focus on something pretty positive for the Browns, even though for those teams that we're going to talk about in this process, maybe not so positive. And today comes off the heels of the Andrew Luck retirement last night, which kind of kicked this into gear, and actually very glad that I didn't get this recorded last week because the Andrew Luck retirement adds kind of to this topic. And so today, as it is aptly being titled, is Luck finally on the Browns side going into the 2019 season. And so we start obviously there with Andrew Luck retiring from the Colts. While the Cleveland Browns do not face Andrew Luck and the Colts, well, not Andrew Luck anymore, Jacoby Brissett and the Colts this year, one of the things that's very clear is that the Colts were, like the Browns, considered almost a playoff lock and a Super Bowl contender. Now, any team can deal with injuries, bad breaks, things that go here and there. But there are certain teams that just kind of are on that next level in the NFL. The Browns have a lot to prove to be certain to be on that level. But just looking at them on paper and what we've seen on the field so far, there's a lot that makes many people believe the Cleveland Browns are not guaranteed a playoff spot, because nobody really is. But they're at that level where they're expected to make the playoffs. And that's a level that Browns fans aren't used to. Well, the Colts were on that level and maybe a little bit higher for many people, given everything that they've proven over the years, how Frank Reich has seen as the head coach as opposed to Freddie Kitchens starting in his first year. But everything changes with Andrew Luck out. So for the Browns and for many other teams, Andrew Luck no longer being there really changes how they see things. Now, the Colts, I believe, are better than most people are assuming right now. I've seen some Vegas betting over-under lines that took them from 9.5 wins down to 6.5 wins with this news. Andrew Luck is very, very good, obviously, when healthy. Jacoby Brissett is obviously a step down for them. But it'll be interesting to see how the rest of that solid young team can come together without Andrew Luck. But all of a sudden, the Colts go from a team that most assumed, expected, believed would be in the playoffs and a Super Bowl contender to a team that has outside shot of making the playoffs. That means that there is one more playoff spot up for grabs. That means the AFC South, with 4 teams that were seen as good to great, with the Colts kind of being at the top of that. Now the other 3 teams all believe stronger that they have a chance at the division. So the Jaguars, the Texans, and the Tennessee Titans all believe a little bit more in their abilities to win the division and make the playoffs. And for teams like the Browns and the rest of the AFC, all of a sudden the Colts aren't really seen as competition for that wild card position. So a Browns team, franchise, and fan base that's used to every piece of luck not going in their favor, and many of you right now are clicking off things in your head, whether it's injuries, suspensions, players just not playing well in systems, drama in the front office, coaching staff, whatever, and then every single penalty that seemed to not go in the Browns' favor. Luck and Miss Lady Luck, as some people would call it, hasn't seemed to be on the Browns' side for a long time. But it's not just Andrew Luck retiring that seems to be Luck kind of switching over into the Browns' favor. When we talk about all those penalties and things going on the field, I think we're going to see a little bit of a transition, not a total one, because there's always going to be penalties that are going to get complained about. But I think you're going to see a transition from the Browns not getting calls because they're not very good, so they don't get calls, to a team that's getting more and more calls. So that's going to be really fun for Browns fans. It's a little bit of a joke, but if Myles Garrett gets all of these holding penalties called on the offensive line against him, no team is going to get a first down ever, because teams will have to hold him just to make sure he's not wrecking their offense. And so things like that, late hits on Baker Mayfield, pass interference calls on Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry because of their really good route running, all of those things will be fun and will be another kind of change in luck that the Browns are dealing with. But then we're going to go through the rest of the schedule to show you just all the different ways that the Browns season seems to have luck on its side, at least starting out. And listen, I don't really believe in luck. I don't believe that talking about this is all of a sudden jinx the Browns, but it just seems lucky in a lot of ways how things have worked out. So starting in week 1, the Titans left tackle, all-pro, Pro Bowl, whatever level you want to put him at, Taylor Lewan, is out for 4 games. It seems like in a lot of years, the Browns, whenever there was a big suspension like that, would be game 5, 6, and 7, somewhere in that area. But week 1, Taylor Lewan, he's gone. We saw what the Browns defensive line did to the Tampa Bay offensive line, and now the Titans have to deal with that without their best offensive lineman. That's a pretty big deal. Week 2, the Jets, Avery Williamson, their linebacker, is out for the year, and they had to talk Matt Khalil out of retirement to come be their center. So while they're young, Sam Darnold is still getting everything together, has shown some good signs. They've already had an injury that's going to be important to them. They already have a center they're trying to figure out, get him into the mix after he quote unquote retired. Hasn't been able to play yet this preseason as they kind of get him ready, as they just talked him out of retirement. Week 3 is a tough one. It's the Rams. The only thing we really see, at least right now, is that they have the Saints the week prior. So that's going to be a huge emotional game for the Rams. And for the Saints, after last year, the penalty that wasn't called, all of that kind of stuff. So a lot of emotion going into week 2, Saints-Rams, that maybe will give the Browns a little bit of a tired team in week 3. Week 4, the Ratbirds come up on the schedule, and so they'll still be dealing with Marquise Brown, who hasn't been able to really perform. And there's a lot of worry that foot injury is going to take a while for him to really kind of get back into the groove of things. And so that'll be helpful for the Browns defense. And then their nickel corner, Tavon Young, who is one of the better nickel corners in the NFL, is out for the season. And so a guy that you would have matched up against Jarvis Landry, Rashard Higgins, those type of players, is going to be out for the season. And so that's just another ding to a Baltimore defense that had a lot of losses in the offseason. And so just a couple extra things against the Ratbirds. The 49ers in week 5, there's a couple injuries that can be important. Trent Taylor looks like he'll probably still be out by week 5 with his foot injury, or he'll just be working himself back. So he's their slot receiver, can play outside as well. A pretty good threat against the Browns, where TJ Carey would match up a lot. Sean Coleman, their backup offensive tackle, Browns fans know a lot about him, will be out. And then Nick Bosa, their top draft pick, is still struggling with injury coming out of Ohio State, and looks like he's going to take a little while to kind of get back. By week 5, he should be fine, but his injury history, along with his brothers, to be honest, just seems a little nice for the Browns that he may not be able to play, may not be 100%. And then Jimmy Garoppolo has not looked good this preseason. The last game he looked better, but a lot of that was the defense he was going against, maybe not him. And then even then he was hit pretty hard by Frank Clark. Still doesn't look comfortable stepping into the pocket. So we'll see if Jimmy Garoppolo really is that next big thing at quarterback that many people make him out to be, or is he going to struggle like he has most of the preseason? And to be honest, he hasn't looked great over the years when he has started. Just everybody thought he would develop, and I'm not sure we're actually seeing that development. And then week 6, another time where Lady Luck is on the Browns side when it comes to a suspension. Jaron Reed, their top defensive lineman, was suspended for 6 games, and the Browns play him in week 6. So again, another time where an injury plays out well for the Browns, just in timing and when they will face off with Seattle. And David Moore, their wide receiver, looks like he'll be missing some time and should miss that game as well. So just a couple big injuries for Seattle going into the Browns Week 7 bye. Now, there's all kinds of ways to try to be positive about bye weeks. In the end, we just don't know if it's going to be best, not best, whatever. It's right in the middle of the season, basically. So 6 games in. For a young team, maybe it'll give them some time to reevaluate, coach, figure out some of the details, give Freddie Kitchens and his staff time to kind of come back together and really spend some time kind of focusing on the last half of the season, where they'll meet the Steelers twice, the Bengals twice, the Ravens again, all of that kind of stuff. So bye week in week 7 doesn't look like it'll be a terrible thing. It's not a week 12 bye week. It's not a week 4 bye week, so it's not a terrible time to have that bye. Somewhere week 7, 8, 9 in that area is a good time for a bye. And so the Browns already have some kind of lucky things on their side in the first 6 weeks. And so as we'll continue through the rest of the season, just a reminder again, thank you for stopping by the OBR Straight Talk podcast. My name is Jared Mueller. You can get a hold of me on Twitter at Jared K. Mueller. That's at JaredKMueller. And so then coming off their week 7 bye, we have the New England Patriots. And let's just be honest, facing the Patriots is always very difficult. But at least the Browns are coming off their bye. They'll have basically 2 weeks to prepare. And while the Browns have 2 weeks to prepare, the Patriots will only have 6 days because they'll be coming off Monday Night Football into their afternoon game with the Browns. And so a quick turnaround for them going into their Week 8 matchup with the Browns. So really the best case scenario for the Browns is they're coming off a bye. The Patriots are coming off Monday Night Football. The only thing better would be the 3 hours earlier, but again, that's probably not as big of a deal as the Browns coming off the bye and the Patriots coming off Monday Night Football. Denver, to be honest, besides the fact they have Joe Flacco starting at quarterback, so far not a ton has popped off from a lucky for the Browns in Week 9. Again, at that point, who knows what the injuries will be like, how their season will be going. Drew Lock, it looks like he'll be missing a bunch of time. So maybe they don't turn to him as early or turn to the young guys as early. We'll see. The Bills in Week 10 have had a lot of injuries to their offensive line. And just to be blunt, they still have Josh Allen as their quarterback. And he has looked he's looked better than he has in the past, but he's still Josh Allen. He's still more of a running back tight end playing quarterback than he is a quarterback. Week 11 is when the Browns start their Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Baltimore, and a couple other teams mixed in end of the season. And as we know about Pittsburgh, it's been the story. No Le'Veon Bell, no Antonio Brown. But again, the thing that I will point to is, and it could really impact the health of Big Ben and the rest of their offensive players, is they lost their offensive line coach, Mike Munchak, this offseason. I think that may play a bigger role than Le'Veon Bell or Antonio Brown. Even though those weapons being out, again, it's nice that the Browns aren't the ones who have this offseason drama, losing players, those kind of things. Then we go on to Week 12 against Miami. They're bad. I don't know how else to say it. The Browns are facing, in their 16-game season, the Browns face 3 of the worst teams in the NFL based on everything that we are seeing at this point in time. So, and 4 games against those 3 very bad teams, and those 4 games against 3 very bad teams start in Week 12. So Week 12, kind of the in-between Pittsburgh game is Miami. Now, you can't overlook any team in the NFL, but you can almost overlook Miami. Almost. So in between Pittsburgh, they have Miami. So it's Pittsburgh in Week 11, a terrible Miami team in Week 12, back to Pittsburgh in Week 13. Again, the weapons being gone, offensive line coach. Who knows how damaged Big Ben will be after the Week 11 matchup. And so that's Week 13. Week 14, another terrible team. Cincinnati has had so many offensive line injuries, retirements, players coming out of retirement just to help them out. And they have a new coach in Zach Taylor. And again, they still have Andy Dalton as a quarterback. AJ Green's foot injury should likely be healed by then, but maybe they've traded him. But Cincinnati's not good. Week 15, Arizona, they're not good. That defense is terrible. Somehow the offense in their last preseason game racked up over 500 yards, and the defense still gave up 45 points. The reason those two things generally don't go together is if your offense is able to rack up 500 yards of offense, it tends to control the clock a little bit and tends to, do a lot of good in clock management. And all of a sudden, how do you have 500 yards of offense and 45 points given up? That seems really difficult. You watch the Arizona Cardinals, they're just not very good. Obviously, they'll have Patrick Peterson back at this point in time, but who knows if they've dealt him. But either way, Kyler Murray has seemed fine. But the Cardinals rarely, at least in preseason, have thrown the ball inside of the hashes. Almost everything is an out-breaking route, outside the numbers, those kind of things, which was really easy to scheme for, right? You have run up the middle and you have pass outside. Now, are they showing us everything? Probably not. But I don't have a lot of confidence in Kirk or Kingsbury to go from being a terrible or bad head coach in college, fired, right? Fired as a head coach, hired as an offensive coordinator in college, and then hired as a head coach in the NFL. I don't know why anybody would have a lot of confidence in him figuring out. There's a lot of things that Chip Kelly struggled with in the NFL because he had this high-powered, fast-paced offense that really hurt the defense. And I think you're seeing that with the Arizona Cardinals. So week 15, again, I think the Cardinals are with the Bengals and with Miami, three of the worst teams in the NFL. So the Browns get them. So again, it's a really kind of interesting mix of games. Pittsburgh still should be a tough team. Probably the second best team in the AFC North, them and Baltimore jockeying for that position. Then you have the terrible Miami team back to Pittsburgh, terrible Cincinnati, terrible Arizona, before you visit and have Baltimore again in week 16. Who knows where they'll be at that point in time. As much as they've run Lamar Jackson, listen, I am someone who believes Lamar Jackson is a very good quarterback. He's going to develop as a passer. What he does as a runner is a part of being a very good quarterback. But if they run him that much, just the pure number of runs makes it more likely that he's going to get hurt. Now, Lamar has done a great job of avoiding big hits, getting down, getting skinny, turning sideways, whatever it is. He's going to not get hit very hard. But any running quarterback that ran as often as him, including Cam Newton and those guys, Carson Wentz, a lot of quarterbacks, they're just as more likely to get injured when you're running. I don't care if it's one run or 150. The problem is your odds go up the more you run the ball. So in week 16 against Baltimore, probably a really important game for both teams if everything goes the way people expect. This could be a game that decides the AFC North after the teams matched up in week 4. We'll see where both teams are at that point in time. Trade deadline, injuries, lots of things can happen. But again, for the Browns, they'll be coming off of 3 out of the last 4 games were against Miami, Cincinnati, and Arizona going into that Baltimore game. Also knowing they have Cincinnati to end the season. Again, we're going to think in week 17 that the Bengals are a terrible team. May have already traded AJ Green. Lots of things like that. So the Browns, 3 of their last 4 games and 4 of their last 6 games are against 3 of the worst teams in the NFL. It's lucky at some level that they're hitting the Bengals on their downturn, that they've got all of these games late in the season when, the Browns are going to have some injuries, likely going to have some banged up players, but these games are going to be so important. So a little bit of scheduling luck for the Browns. So as we go through the 17 weeks of the NFL season, there's a lot of places where suspensions and injuries and scheduling just work in the Browns' favor. Does that mean they're going to win all of these games? No. Again, if we walk through that schedule, they play the Rams, they're a great team. They play the Ravens, who their defense is going to take a step down. Their offense may be able to take a step up, just with more talent. They got 2 rookies that can really fly on the outside when Marquise Brown is actually healthy. But they lost Tavon Young. They lost a lot of defenders on the offseason, but still should be a difficult team. We don't really know about the Niners. They could really kind of fly or flop. Seattle is really in kind of a transition, and with Jaron Reed out, it'll be interesting to see how their defense plays without Earl Thomas back there, all of those kind of things. The Patriots, yeah, it's great. The Browns are coming off a bye, and they're coming off Monday Night Football, but it's still the Patriots. Denver has some quality players, a really good defense with Von Miller and Bradley Chubb coming off the edge. The Bills, good defense. Pittsburgh are who they are. Baltimore again in Week 16. So there's still a lot of difficult games on the schedule. It's just really nice to look at the schedule and look at ways that the schedule has really played out well for the Browns. We're going to finish up talking about a few other areas in the AFC that may have turned well and where luck was on the Browns' side. But we're going to take a small break just to talk a little bit about food, because you guys know how much I like food. So we'll be back with our 5-minute food break. If this is not something that interests you that much, I will go ahead and let you know you can skip ahead just about 5 minutes. So as you guys all know, if you've been listening, I love food and I'm married to a baker. So food is an important part of kind of just how we process life. And so for this segment, I just want to talk a little bit about what I'm about to make when I get off of this podcast. And that is some overnight oats, something many of you maybe know about, do all the time, whatever. And you're like, oh, Jared, that's not that interesting. Yeah, it might not be. But for those of you who have never done that, overnight oats are a way of making sure breakfast goes a little smoother for you and yours. So really what that looks like for me, and what's already kind of prepped on my counter and ready to go, is using mason jars and just putting everything together in a way that allows so you don't have to cook the oatmeal at all, and it's cold. It creates a little bit of an interesting texture, all kinds of stuff, and it's healthy. And I can just grab it in the morning, along with the smoothies my wife made, so that we just kind of have something healthy to eat when I get to work, and then have the coffee to kind of get the caffeine going. But for overnight oats, again, you can look up a ton of different recipes for this, but something that it's just so easy, nutritious, as well as tastes good. And let's just be honest, sometimes eating healthy is hard because it takes too long, or it doesn't taste good, right? Or sometimes it's too difficult, and I get that all of those things are real. It's one of the reasons I like overnight oats, is it starts the day out right, healthy, yada, yada, yada. So all I do is, in the bottom of a mason jar, there goes some oatmeal. Again, you can check out all the amounts and find the actual recipes, but I just want to tell you how easy it is. So bottom of a mason jar goes oatmeal. We're going to use chia seeds as well, just for nutritional information, or nutritional addition. Not as many as the oats. So it's oats, some chia seeds, some honey, and then some yogurt. So I use this honey vanilla Greek yogurt. And again, it's not a ton of that. There's some, depending on how much you want to eat in the morning. And then any kind of milk. You can use water if you want, but I think we have almond milk that I'm going to use, only because we use it for the smoothie, so I might as well use it up. So again, oatmeal, some chia seeds, some honey, some yogurt, and then some milk. And then just to make my life easier, I'm going to actually put my fruit in already. So I'm going to throw in some bananas, some strawberries. I'm going to have that already in there, so that I can just grab it and go. Other people will tell you, have those chopped up on the side, throw them in at the end. I just don't have the energy or time for all that. I don't care if it gets a little mushy in there. I'm okay. So I'm going to mix everything besides the fruit together. And what's going to happen is the milk and the acid from the yogurt is going to help soften up the seeds and the oatmeal in a way that seems like it's tasting really, really good to you. the sweetness of the honey, the yogurt, all that stuff just kind of comes together, and then you have the fruit at the end. Other things you can throw in there, I mean, you could throw in chocolate chips if you wanted to. Some people will layer on some peanut butter just to give that extra protein if you want. There's lots of ways to do it, but again, overnight oats, if you just Google it, you'll see a lot of options for that. But basically, for me, it's mason jar, grab it and go in the morning. And again, just adding some health to your day. So if that is something you're looking to do, because getting healthier is important to you, and you want to be healthy throughout this brown season, and maybe the stress of a good team versus the stress of a bad team will make you feel better and make you less likely to eat as many fried foods or drink as many empty calorie beers. Not that I'm against beer, but just throwing that out there from a health perspective, maybe something that you might want to do. So again, just Google overnight oats. Look for an easy way to make your day start better and healthier than McDonald's or something out of the freezer or toaster strudels or Pop-Tarts, those kind of things. So again, overnight oats, I'm going to make those right after this podcast is recorded. So now that I'm good and hungry, even though I don't have those things made, so looks like I might have to do some kind of non-healthy thing or a protein bar or whatever. We'll finish off talking a little bit about how luck seems to be on the Browns side. Again, we started talking about the Andrew Luck retirement, which seems to take the Colts out of the running as a playoff and Super Bowl contender, which should make the Browns season options getting into the playoffs maybe a little bit easier. Again, one more space seems to be available for the Browns. But there are other ways that the Browns season seems to have luck on its side. And we talked through their season games, their slate of games, and the injuries and the suspensions and the players and the bye weeks and just where things seem to be in the Browns' advantage. There's a couple other contenders in the AFC. So again, the Browns are not only competing against the Steelers and the Ratbirds and the Bengals for the AFC North, but if they should happen to struggle there, or maybe the Steelers or the Ravens have a really great season to make the playoffs, the Browns then have to worry about the rest of the AFC. And so a couple of other teams besides the Colts. So again, not that we dismiss the Colts completely, but the Colts go from assumed, believed they're going to get into the playoffs and being a Super Bowl contender to, they're going to have to fight and scratch and claw to possibly make the playoffs. But right now we have them on the outside looking in with not a high chance that they make it. Well, you also have to look at the Houston Texans. Their offensive line continues to be bad around Deshaun Watson. Jadeveon Clowney has still not signed his franchise tag, so we have no idea if he'll come back to play, when he'll come back to play, or if he'll sign that franchise tag to be traded someplace else. And then what do the Texans get in return for not having Jadeveon Clowney on their team? Is that a player that can help them this year? Some people think they'll try to trade for an offensive tackle because right now Rod Johnson, a player who struggled greatly in Cleveland, had very little bend, very little ability to get low enough to really be a solid blocker. Looks like they're starting tackle right now. So will they trade Clowney? Will they be able to find a tackle or an offensive lineman that can help right away? Or will they have to trade Clowney for a future pick that doesn't help them in 2019? So they have a bad offensive line. They have, at least at a minimum, probably are not going to see Jadeveon Clowney for a number of games. And it's something important to remember. Clowney doesn't have to sign, just like Le'Veon Bell. Clowney doesn't have to sign that franchise tag and play any number of games this year for him to be a free agent again next year. Now, they can tag him again if they want to, but he doesn't have to. So this isn't about 6 games so he gets 10 games in, any of that. Him playing 16 games or 0 games has the same result next year, and that's that he's a free agent. The only way that it impacts him is if he gets the Texans or another team that signs him to, or when he signs the franchise tag, that it's signed that he can not be tagged next year. That's the only real change there. So Clowney could do that for the whole season, 10 games, 6 games, 2 games, 1 game, the playoffs, whatever it is. Clowney can sign that contract and have that no franchise tag next year in there at any time. So Houston could have Clowney for 16 games, 0 games, 2 games, who knows? So bad offensive line, no Jadeveon Clowney, and now their number 1 over running back, Lamar Miller, is out for the season with an ACL tear. So that leaves Duke Johnson as their really lone running back. And now we all love Duke Johnson. A lot of us love Duke Johnson as a Cleveland Brown. Him carrying the load and being their workhorse doesn't seem to fit what we saw in Cleveland. There will be a little bit of concern now on my part that the load that he is required to take as the Texans running back could lead him to miss out on those 10 games just due to injury and just use and that extra usage like we talked about with Lamar Jackson. Could mean the Browns don't get the 3rd round pick, they only get a 4th round pick for him. But the Texans, another team in that AFC South, another team that is competing for the playoffs, has goals and aspirations of the playoffs. Well, no Lamar Miller, bad offensive line, possibly no Jadeveon Clowney. And then you have the Los Angeles Chargers. You have the Melvin Gordon holdout. Now, he, different than Jadeveon Clowney, is holding out. And so for him, he must play in 10 games to accrue a season towards free agency. But it'll be interesting. Different than the Dallas Cowboys and Ezekiel Elliott, it seems like the Chargers are kind of dug in on this one. And so is Melvin Gordon. So who knows when or if Melvin Gordon will make it to the Chargers. Will it only be for 10 games? Will they be forced to trade him? Texans seem like a good kind of trade partner there. But what will they get back? Will they get a player that can help them this year? Or will they only get picks? So again, whether they have Melvin Gordon for 10 games, 16 games, we don't know. And then we know that Derwin James, they're all everything secondary, linebacker, cornerback, kind of everything is out for the year. So the Chargers have one player on offense who is, we don't know what that end result is going to be, but most likely is going to play 10 games or be traded. Then we have Derwin James. One of their best defensive players is out for the year. Joey Bosa always seems to have some kind of injury concerns. Phillip Rivers is getting older. Keenan Allen is always kind of nicked up. So a lot going on there. Then we obviously have talked about the Colts. We talked about the Tennessee Titans. We've talked about the Ravens and the Steelers. So there's just a lot going on in the AFC that seems to point to Lady Luck finally bringing on the Browns side. Does that mean everything is going in the Browns' favor? Does that mean it is just sunshine, rainbows, and cupcakes for the Browns? No, we know that's not true. And we can forecast both short-term and long-term what that looks like. And we're going to do that on the next Straight Talk podcast, brought to you by the Orange and Brown Report, a part of the 24/7 Sports and CBS Sports networks. Again, I am your host, Jared Mueller. You can get a hold of me on Twitter at Jared K. Mueller, JaredKMueller. You can find all of our work at theobr.com. Our Twitter feed is at theobr. Pretty simple, right? And so we will be back and we will start to be ramping this up to 2 or 3 times a week now that the season is in front of us and ready to go. So make sure you subscribe, you like, you comment, do all of those things because I'm sure that helps us somehow. Let your friends know this is the best podcast for you. And again, if you are looking for insider information, or you're looking for film breakdowns and all kinds of things, subscribe to the OBR. It is worth your money for everything you'll get in Rumor Central, Ask the Insiders, and then all of our premium work. And again, thank you for stopping by, and go Browns.